Barry Donadio, political and military analyst, and also from Kiev, you have Mr. Ivan Iwas, advisor at the Ukrainian Center for Bulletin from Moscow. We have Dr. Sergei Markov, professor of political science and former advisor of President Putin. I'm so happy to have all of you today. I'd like to start from New York. Hello, Mr. Barry. I'd like to start with you with what Mr. Mike Walters has mentioned. He has explained the plan for ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, which include 3 stages, starting the attacks on the infrastructure, and then stop the attacks in the Black Sea, and then distribute the territories between Russia and Ukraine. How this plan could be implemented in light of the continuity of fighting?
Right. So this is the first step to stopping a horrible war. I commend the Trump administration for getting these steps done. A ceasefire in the Black Sea is beneficial to Russia more than Ukraine, because Ukraine and its drones are dominating the Black Sea, and the Russian fleet has had to move back. So I could see why Putin may want to do that, but it is a step in the right direction. And then the attacks on the infrastructure, I think this is beneficial more to Ukraine, where it is more of a humanitarian outreach by Russia to show that they are serious about potentially bringing this war to an end, and showing steps that's going to show the peace negotiation that both sides are serious in trying to get a ceasefire. And I expect there to be more gains made as we move forward today in the negotiations in Saudi Arabia.
There are also some points that might be disagreements. I would like to take one of these points to Mr. Kiev, Mr. Ivan US. Mr. Ivan, the question for you. I would like to start with what is always mentioned by the Ukrainian officials, that Ukrainian view territorial integrity as a red line, while Russia insists on staying in the 4 Ukrainian regions annexed in 2022. Will this point become an obstacle in the current negotiation, Mr. Ivan?
Киев, Кэти Марина, Wamashedi, Al-Qaeda News, Soprano Redoubt, of course, greetings to the guest. Of course, Ukraine before said about our red line. It's, of course, territorial integrity of Ukraine. So, Ukraine are not ready to recognize any part of our country according to 1991 border. I mean, not only the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, but also Donetsk, Lugansk, and Crimea as a Russia. So it's first red line. Second red line is the fact that we are not planning to stop mobilization in our country, and we are not planning to send our troops out of the front line, especially from the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson region, and we know that Russia repeats that as their demand. That's why, and of course, we are not planning to stop receiving military aid from all our partners. That's why Ukraine supports the U.S. proposition for 30-day ceasefire without any conditions from each side, from Russia's side or Ukraine. Whether this is achievable, I'm not sure. Let's defend. We will see what today they bring to us, what tomorrow news which appears, because you know that after today's meeting between U.S. and Russia, there will be meeting between U.S. and Ukraine. But I think that there will be some proposition from the United States based on that of Russia, and then I'm sure that Ukraine is ready to cross those lines. So the probability of this truth, as for me, is very, very small. But who knows? Because sometimes some ideas appear. For example, we received the idea to return to Black Sea Grain Initiative that worked since July 2022 till July 2023. So for now, probably that will be a topic, but I'm not sure that even with that question, each side can achieve a good result. Thank you, Maria.
Of course, there are a lot of challenges, but also some of the challenges for Moscow. The question for Dr. Sergei Markov. Kremlin has stated that the Black Sea Initiative is on the agenda of the Riyadh talks. What is the significance of proposing a ceasefire in the Black Sea as a phase of truce between Russia and Ukraine?
I think the ceasefire on the Black Sea not so important because Black Sea is not the place for intensive battle. We can see that in the Black Sea, it's only Russian fleet, no, in fact, Ukrainian fleet. But at the same time, Ukraine has very good sea drones, which attack Russian Black Sea fleet effectively. And in fact, Russian Black Sea fleet almost closed now in the ports under the panic of port weaponry. And also trades can be already used very freely through the Black Sea ports, both from Ukrainian Black Sea ports and Russian Black Sea ports. This Black Sea ceasefire could be only, in fact, symbolic.
Thus, Dr. Sergey would like to add something?
I think getting to it, I want to say that now we have a technical political team which is discussing in area the conditions of the sectoral ceasefire, not a full ceasefire, but sectoral ceasefire. And first of all, I think the ceasefire about on the strikes against energy infrastructure. Now with discussion, Ukraine wants to make it bigger one, not only energy infrastructure, but general infrastructure. But Russia wants to make first step more small, because Russia strongly believes that Ukrainian regime is criminal one, never follow any conditions of agreement, and Ukrainian regime almost 100% will violate those agreements. It's better if Ukrainian regime violates small agreements than to violate big agreements.
We'll discuss more deeply. And there's a question for Mr. Barry. Mr. Barry, the U.S. has held two separate meetings with the Russian and Ukrainian delegations in an attempt to bridge their differences. In order to bridge their differences, could both sides' acceptance of a temporary truce lead to the end of the war, or just a truce for another cause?
I think the goal is to have a complete ceasefire and an end to the war. You see the Americans, the Russians, and the Ukrainians going back and forth because they're laying out terms, and this is a good thing. This is discussions about ending a horrible war. So they do have to go back and forth and see what terms are acceptable to each side, whether it be Russia or Ukraine. Ultimately, the Trump administration is trying to get a complete ceasefire, and this is just talking about the terms that it's going to be done under. I think there's going to be very stiff terms set by Russia. In my opinion, they are in a position of advantage. I don't see the Russians ever giving up Crimea because I believe strategically the Russians need Crimea to survive militarily, strategically. It is a military strategic location. As for the other lands, I think that is up for negotiation as well.
Mr. Ivan, the question for you. Ukraine is focusing right now to target energy facilities in Russia. Do you think Kiev is using this escalation in order to have some gains in the battles, afraid from the results of these negotiations?
Of course, Ukraine needs to propose some. And we understand that Russia always said that what Ukraine could do to make damage to Russia. And Ukraine started to attack Russian refineries. That's why Ukrainian proposition that we will not attack your refinery and you are not attack civilian infrastructure. You know that last several nights Russia made constant attack on our cities in Kiev, where I'm living, one person was burned alive after Russian attack, another person was murdered in their house, including the young girl. So that's why Ukraine says that you will not attack civilian buildings and infrastructure, for example, Ukrainian electricity facility, and vice versa. Ukraine will not attack Russian refineries.
So do you think it's different? Is it strange to you to have a military escalation while we're talking about ceasefire agreement?
Marina, it's reality. Unfortunately, it's reality. So every time when both Russia and Ukraine coming close to the fire, both sides start to attack more seriously because they need to press on the opposite side. That's why Russia attacks Ukraine by attacking our residential buildings, and Ukraine, vice versa, attacking Russia refineries, trying to explain that you should stop attacking our cities and we will not attack your refineries. That's the deal that will be discussed, and I swear that will be proposed at least in today's meeting and tomorrow meeting between Ukraine and the United States as a proposition for us. Whether the side decided to agree, let's pretend I'm not sure, but we will see. Everything can happen with the world. Thank you, Marina.
Sergey, so this was a justification for the recent escalation in the time of the speaking about the cease agreement. So why do you think this current escalation for both sides, Ukraine or Russia, in light they both agreed to come to the to a negotiation table?
I think there are no escalation. I think the possible escalation is a direct lie from Ukrainian side, and the attempt to manipulate by Donald Trump team, and the attempt to show that Russia is violating attempt of Donald Trump to push both countries to the ceasefire. If you look at the specific figures of the strike, you can see there are no escalation at all, or even the amount of strikes became a little bit less last week after Vladimir Putin, after negotiation by telephone with Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin made the decision unilateral from Russian side to stop strike against energy infrastructure on the Ukrainian territory. And now you can see that the Ukrainian side try to falsify fact about Russian strike against Ukrainian energy infrastructure, even increasing of such strike. It's just clear lie. And by the way, American side also knows that they are lying. It's interesting situation. If American and some any honest politician have negotiation with the Ukrainian side, they step by step understood that probably Russia is right for the Ukrainian side during these 3 years. Used to lie every time and used to falsify every fact, and they already have habit to do. So it's too much clear that they are lying.
Mr. Barry, you have heard what Mr. Ivain from Kiev had mentioned, also what my guest from Moscow has mentioned regarding the reasons of the escalation in the light of ceasefire agreement. I would like to add for them also what Mr. Steve Wotkov had mentioned, Mr. Barry, about some optimism to end that war, which is the most violent war in Europe since the Second World War. So the question is, what kind of tools Washington have in order to pressure or persuade both Moscow and Kiev?
Well, you have a lot of pressure, not only from the United States, but you have pressure from NATO itself, the Europeans. You even have pressure from the citizens in Russia that I'm sure want an end to this as well. You have the United States sanctions that are against Russia, and I can't imagine Russia is not suffering under all the sanctions it's under. I've checked the air traffic over Russia just today. There is still no American or NATO aircraft flying over Russia commercial-wise. That hurts Russia. So that's a billion-dollar industry being hurt as well. So you also have the full military might of NATO as well as the United States. And that's all the more reason why the United States wants to bring this to the negotiation table before, quite frankly, this gets completely out of control. We have to also remember we fought World War II in a matter of 5 years. It was over. This war has gone 3 years, and it's not a world war. So this is a very vicious, horrible war that we really need to give peace a chance and see if we could solve it. Because after this, we all know that there's more death and destruction if they do not get a settlement out of this.
I will also come for this important point, not only for the military, but also political and economic. Mr. Ivan, continuing what Mr. Barry has mentioned and what also was mentioned by the Ukrainian defense minister, he actually stated that the initial talks with his American counterpart were constructive and helpful. Did Ukraine's change in stance on negotiating, and the American proposal came as a result of US pressure? So do you think this change is a result for some American pressure, or after repeated losses was a driving force to behind this shift?
I think that the meeting between Ukraine and the United States, Ukraine first of all presented the United States some facts from the current course of events of the front line, some information that the United States of America have not a full vision, let's call it so, some incorrect information that we hear from the United States representatives, and Ukraine, of course, presented our vision, presented our fact-checking when the several statements that we hear from the U.S. officials explain that it's not true, actually. That's why I think that in this meeting, why Ukraine said that it was constructive, that we at least find the argument that the United States of America should still insist on their proposition of ceasefire, and there should be no conditions from Russia's side, and that we support that. Another way, quite possible that there will be no ceasefire, and Donald Trump said that he needed till the 21st of April, so it's quite hard to achieve as of now for that date. Nevertheless, I think that the main reason that Ukraine finds some probably interest of the United States and propositions that we discussed with them. I talk about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station. I think that is a question that's still very important, and the United States of America expressed their interest for controlling the largest nuclear power station in the Europe, that is the Zaporizhzhia power station. So quite possible that we discuss that, and quite possible that it was some talks about Black Sea Grain Initiative. So probably that idea is something new that so could be discussed, and each side try to understand the interest that it could let. Actually, Russia that decided not to promote Black Sea Grain Initiative in July 2023. Now, according to some Russian politicians, want to return it because Ukraine, without it, received some results in the Black Sea. It means that it's in both interest of Russia to have build freer in the Black Sea, and for Ukraine that our goods will move through Black Sea, but not through the territory of neighboring countries where Ukraine lose money, and so lose territory and lose money. So that could be a good discussion, but as I said, let's wait for the final decision that probably will be up at the moment. Thank you, Maria.
Dr. Sergey, also building on what Mr. Ivan had mentioned, and what was mentioned by Kremlin, that there are many other discussions regarding the potential settlement in Ukraine that need a solution, according to what the Kremlin mentioned, that in the same time, when we have this mutual understanding with Washington, what kind of mutual understanding regarding the settlement you should have with U.S.? What kind of messages Russia is sending for Ukraine through these statements?
I think there are a few levels of discussion now at area. One is a discussion about sectoral ceasefire, meaning stopping of strike against energy infrastructure and possibly Black Sea ceasefire, and possibly also ceasefire on another infrastructure inside of the countries. So it's one discussion, one way. Another level is about a total 40 days ceasefire, and it's also need a lot of conditions. And next is a discussion about some principles and steps towards the full peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. So this is mutual understanding of such a line. And what Russia and United States agree that
the conflict is going to end, or it might be as just some negotiation that we have some temporary truce, or maybe then they could overcome some challenges but the war. So do you think this war will be end? What is the expected scenario for the coming months? Do you think this will be end or just something temporary?
I think the probability that this war could be end and that this spread is very small. I think it's something about 25 or 30%, no more. But after this, I suggested that probably.
Sir, why, sir, do you think this is small? It would be a shocking answer, because after all these attempts and these American pressures and these negotiations, meetings, all of that, it will have only some temporary truce, not a complete ceasefire. So why this? What do you think this?
First of all, I think that American pressure came to Russia Russia used to fight against United States of America during this almost 3 years. And because we got that Ukrainian army proxy army of United States of America, we have something about more than 30,000 sanctions, which never happened in the modern history. And so sanctions to have more pressure on against Russia. What is reasonable is to have a negotiation about conditions.
But sir, there is a Russian-American rapprochement. I don't want to tell you a lot of things, but of course you have been following this statement by Trump about having, and also Zelensky in the White House. You can see that there is a better relations between President Trump and Putin right now, and also these ongoing consultations. The Americans have been giving this support statement for Russia. Do you think? I'm not going to say this a new order, but it's a clear approachment and declared by the two, even at least announced by Trump.
Trump not support Moscow narratives. It's propaganda of Kiev and some European capitals. Trump and his team, like we have just saying that, look, Russians' arguments are reasonable, and we should take this argument in account if we want to have this deal. And we can see that position of Ukraine and European capitals towards this war, towards Russia, some kind of ultimatums. But Donald Trump wants to say that to talk with Russia by ultimatums is senseless, especially taking account that Russia is going forward. The Ukrainian army is losing some territories step by step. And that's why the American approach looks like a little bit more close to the Russian approach, but it's not true. American approach just more close to the reality. In the situation when Ukrainian and European point of view looks like out of reality, but in fact, they are not so much on reality. They are only provoke. Europe and Ukraine want to have such negotiation which should be collapsed and we should have no result, and they want to continue this war against Russia. But Donald Trump wants to make peace deal. That's why he believes, and his team continued many times, that both countries, Russia and Ukraine, should make step back. But Europeans and Ukrainian regime, they want to say that only Russia should make step back. But it's not realistic.
European point is very important. I would like to take it to New York. Mr. Barry, there was always a European concern from the Russian-Ukrainian war expansion for other European states, but the situation has changed now. Europe seems to be away from the current discussions. Why Trump administration insists to take some steps to end the war unilaterally without the European consultation? Do you think Europe became out of the Russian-Ukrainian equation discussions?
Yeah, so right now we all know that the United States is the leader of all of NATO. So the United States is taking a leadership role in these negotiations in an attempt to put this war to an end. I don't believe that the Europeans are out of the equation totally. And there is a lot of talk on the news about how the United States does not support NATO. That is highly untrue. We have a strong connection with NATO, and you will see U.S. support for NATO, as well as if these negotiations fail and go nowhere and Putin decides to continue this war aimlessly, I imagine the United States will go right back to funding Ukraine. But this is very delicate right now. This is a negotiation. The United States or Donald Trump and his special envoy cannot go into this talk calling names and looking for differences with Russia. We're trying to show our connections with Russia and become peaceful, a peaceful, neutral negotiator through our friends in Saudi Arabia. So we're throwing everything that we can at this negotiation for it to succeed, and maybe we can all come back to a peaceful resolution to this horrible war.
Ivan, you have heard what Ms. Dr. Sergey has mentioned, that this truce this does not mean ending the war, the Russian-Ukrainian war. So do you think this war is going to be end, or all the indicators saying that all the coming scenarios are just for temporary ceasefire and discussions?
Probably it will be unexpected, but I agree with that. The American will be not the end of the war, because it's existential war between Russia and Ukraine, and the two variants, as I explained, is the key of Russia. So any kind of peace will be temporary. That's the main problem. I understand that Donald Trump wants to have peace, and he does want to see temporary peace, but reality is simple, that Russia has their clear target to destroy Ukraine. Ukraine wants to survive. So as we mentioned several times, that if Ukraine stops the fight, there will be no Ukraine. If Russia stops the fight, there will be no war. That's a very clear position and very clear position. But that's really all we talk about partners, and we understand the threat that it is in case of poverty in this war, not only for Ukraine, but as some German scientists said several days ago, that in case of Ukraine defeat, war between Russia and Baltic countries, inflation of several months before that 2 years ago. German chamber of
Do you think Ukraine see that Ukraine? Do you think Ukraine view that we should have some positive steps in these discussions, especially with the new events regarding the European decline in support and also the reapproachment? Even it was something simplistic, as Mr. Sergey has mentioned. Do you think Ukraine view this decline for what is so-called the Ukrainian support, whatever, for the military and economic support?
I don't think that Europe comes to support Ukraine. It's not only about Europe as the continent, European Union plus the United Kingdom. No, it's also Turkey. It's also Japan and South Korea. It's the countries that support Ukraine, and in financial and economic point of view, they can do that. Furthermore, South Korea is a good producer of weapons. And now when Russia asked Northern Korea to help them, and without Northern Korea help, for Russia it will be harder. In Southern Korea, they understand that in exchange for their support to Russia, Northern Korea will ask for Russia to attack Southern Korea. That's why it's existential question not only for Ukraine, it's existential question for South Korea. That's why I think that support will be with Ukraine. Without the United States, of course, it will be extremely hard. For me, it's hard to imagine what it will be. But as I said, Ukraine understands that it's a question of our survival. That's why we will be this fight. Europeans understand that after Ukraine war comes to them, it's why it's their survival, and they will help out. South Korea, of course, will be the same thing with us, and Japan also too, because Japan and South Korea, yes, they have wars, but nevertheless, they understand the interest of both of them. But let's take into account the fact that in case of Ukraine victory in this war and Russia defeat, one of the results will be returning to Japan their northern territory that Russia calls for you. For Japan, it's a good argument to support Ukraine and be without till the Ukrainian victory, with arguments that Ukraine have on the table, and that can help to us in this war. That's why we are not ready to go to some capitulation as Russia wants to pass, and if we are ready to fight, yes, it will be very hard, but nevertheless, we in this fight for 3 years. Who can imagine 3 years ago that Ukraine would be in this fight for 3 years? But nevertheless, it's 3 years ago. Russia was near to our capital, Ukrainian capital, Kiev, where I am thinking. Now, Russia very glad that Ukraine pull out of Kursk region, not full Kursk region, nevertheless. But also, what will be 3 years? Probably Russia will be glad that Ukraine tells to get them off. And the sounds crazy, but in such a high dynamic will be closer to know. So let's see. Thank you, Maria.
Dr. Sergey, regarding the European discussions, this is also a very important point that is discussed by two guests, is the idea of having a European military power to oversee the ceasefire agreement. How Russia views this?
We, as understand, European countries now want just to use ceasefire for the making military change. First of all, they want to help Ukrainian army to come through the crisis where Ukrainian army appear to be now because of victories of Russian army. And also European countries want to send some of their troops to the Ukrainian territory. They want to claim all troops on the Ukrainian territory as peacekeepers. But I think it's wrong. Peacekeepers could be only neutral countries. And European countries not neutral. They take part in the war against Russia by different ways. That's why it's correct to call European troops to Ukraine as war keepers. Because they want this war to continue until failure of Russia, as already good time mentioned. Until failure of Russia, it's their final goal. So that's why Russia put conditions, because Russia already had experience from this one and two agreements. It was also also ceasefire, which has been used by Western countries and by Ukrainian regime just for making Ukrainian army more strong. That's why Russia wants to say stop military supply of Ukrainian army from abroad during this ceasefire period, and also some guarantees that no foreign troops, except those who have been approved by Security Council of the United Nations, would be deployed on the Ukrainian territory. In fact, Russia will be very strongly against any troop of any NATO countries, and not only abroad, even any country from Rammstein group. It's those group of the countries which supply Ukrainian army. It means not only France, Britain, Germany, but also South Korea, Japan, Australia, and some other countries will be not allowed to send their troops to the Ukrainian territory. It's clear Russian demands.
I would like to thank you so much, Dr. Sergei Markov, Professor of Political Science and former advisor for Russian President Vladimir Putin. I would like to ask you to stay with me. We will be in a short break and then we will continue these discussions. We are in a short break.